Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Customer had a reservation for the 4th floor at a 3-floor hotel, so I took her to the roof. Several years ago I worked front desk at a privately owned hotel, non-chain, that had been a Days Inn 5 years prior. The only way to book a reservation was to talk to the front desk staff. No online reservations, no third-party reservations. About 50% of our rooms were sold to walk-ins. One holiday weekend we are booked full. Our elderly elevator is having some trouble with all the traffic and spooking guests, so I close it and call for a repairman, but it's 10 o'clock at night, so I'm not expecting anybody until the next morning. All of our guests are checked in, our accessibility rooms are on the same floor as the lobby, so I'll just help out anyone with their luggage if they have more and put up a sign saying so. In walks a woman I don't recognize from check-in. She plops a piece of paper in front of me and then goes and gets lots of luggage. The paper shows her with a reservation at Days Inn at this address for tonight for 1/10 the price we were selling before being fully booked. She comes back to the desk, likely thinking that I have been checking her in all this time. I regret to inform you that we do not accept third-party reservations. We are unfortunately already booked for the night. I have a reservation. It's right there. I paid good money for it. Ma'am, I believe you. Unfortunately you are not in our system because we don't take third-party reservations. They sold it to you fraudulently. You are just trying to steal my money. I have a confirmation number right there. I handed it you. Yes ma'am, you handed me a reservation to a Days Inn. We are, hotel name, gesturing to a sign. All of the signage inside and outside the building is correct. Also, this is for a 4th floor room, we only have 3 floors. I stayed at this Days Inn last year on the 4th floor. This argument continues for a while with me keeping my cool, informing her that we are booked, all of our rooms are full, me insisting that we don't have a 4th floor, not Days Inn, don't take third-party reservations, etc. Eventually she screams at me that I am going to take her to her room on the 4th floor, that she paid for, right now. I don't respond, just stare at her with a blank face until she slaps the desk and screams, "Now," again. I don't mind making a room key, but I do grab my huge keyring and we both load ourselves up with her excessive luggage and climb the stairs. Once we get to the 3rd floor I gesture to the 3rd floor sign and tell her it is the 3rd floor. I then use my maintenance key to unlock the door to the maintenance stairs, which are not lit, and she trudges up behind me not saying anything. I open the floor to the tarred roof and walk outside. And here is the 4th floor. I hope it is as nice as the last time you stayed here. I drop her luggage and go down the stairs back to the front desk. Honestly, had she been nicer to me I would have tried to help her get a room at a different hotel and submit documentation to try and get her a refund, or charge back, from the third party. But since she screamed at me I left her and her luggage on the roof. Plus, she insisted she had stayed on the 4th floor, so that's what she got. Dit. There was an option at the bottom of the stairs to go straight outside inside of coming by the front desk. I didn't see her again and she wasn't there when I went to lock the roof back up on my midnight rounds. Next one is titled, No Masks Allowed. This will be short and sweet. I work for a large tech company that services equipment in the field. My company requires us to wear masks anytime we are on a customer site. We also have our own assessment to see if a location is safe and may remove ourselves if it seems sketchy. Yesterday I went to a job site that had a no mask policy on the door. Not wearing a mask is common here in the South and I usually ignore it. The customers don't care because they need their shit fixed, so it's an even trade-off. Well, this customer was polite and suggested I could remove my mask. I kindly told her no and explained it was our company policy. She then explained her company had a no mask policy. I told her it sounds like we have a conflict of policy and she will need to call my corp office to sort it out. I'm just a worker bee and cannot make policy changes on the spot, so I grabbed my stuff and walked out. The equipment is leased by us, so no one else is allowed to service it. Good luck, lady. Edit. To be clear, I am vaccinated. This does not eliminate company policy or potential for infection by other strains. To be honest, I rather be safe than miss work, spread something to my customers, or worse. Edit 2. Fixed a line that mistakenly suggested no mask policies are common in the South. I meant not wearing a mask is common in the South. Big oops. I also use personal protective equipment such as masks, gloves, and eye protection when dealing with specific substances. The policy overall still would be unacceptable pre-COVID due to interfering with safety protocols. Update. Boss called and said the customer has decided to relax their stance while I'm on site. They also approved for overtime since they need their equipment for tomorrow. On my way now to get started. Next one is titled, Aim at the Middle Target. When I was a teenager, my dad's friend invited our family to his house for dinner. Sometime before the meal, he brought my dad and I into the backyard where he had an archery range set up. He showed us his brand new crossbow, which he'd spent his Christmas bonus on. It was a ducking rad crossbow, and it was obvious that he was really proud of it. He even bought the most expensive crossbow bolts that he could find. After demonstrating it and letting my dad fire a few shots, he asked my dad if he thought I could handle it. Dad chuckled and said, "He's never fired a crossbow, but I think he'll be fine." I loaded the crossbow, standing fewer than 10 meters in front of the target. There were 5 bull's eyes on the target, arranged like the 5 pips on a die. My dad's friend told me to aim for the middle target. I did, and the bolt went into the bottom right target, a few inches off center. I told him how cool it was and thanked him for letting me use it. He loaded it again, handed it to me, and said, "Try again." It's a really accurate crossbow. If you line up the sights on the center target, it will go right in the middle. Just don't aim for the bottom right again because I don't want to risk hurting the bolts. Here's what he didn't know. While it's true I had never fired a crossbow, my dad had spent the last decade teaching me how to shoot guns. And I was good. I don't want to brag too much because I've seen much better shooters, but I was good enough that when I joined the army a few years later, there were a few times where I had to zero my rifle multiple times because I would fire 3 shots and make 2 holes in the paper. Firing a crossbow is a bit different, but the skills transfer easily. I told him, "I think I'll aim for the top left this time." "No, don't do that. I don't want the bolt to get lost. Just aim for the middle target." That's what I did the last time. I think the sights just aren't adjusted for my eyes. Just line up the sights on the middle target and that's where it will go. I looked over at my dad and he was just smiling, so I decided to do exactly what he said. I aimed for the center target and the bolt took the same trajectory as the last one. It wasn't a Robin Hood shot where the second bolt goes into the first, but it was close enough to break the notch and destroy some of the fetching. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then my dad's friend said, "That was a $50 bolt." My dad replied, "Then you should have let him aim for the top left." Next one is titled, Don't Send Emails Outside of Work? Sure. Backstory. Some of our field agents in my company were taken off the road on full pay during COVID but expected to be available for retraining etc. in anticipation of a return to work. At the beginning of last month I started scheduling training for agents to return to the field. Pre-COVID, these agents worked a 11 to 7 shift and I usually worked business hours. There at times I'd be around from 7 a.m. or doing something at 9 in the evening though and generally would respond to an email if I felt it warranted one at that time. During COVID and retraining, agents were asked to be available during business hours instead for these trainings and not their usual shift. Everyone seemed happy enough to do this upon request. One agent, who can be a serial complainer at the best of times, started whining that he was getting emails outside of his work times, i.e. 9 or 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. Now, I usually send invites to training etc. or handouts whenever I get a free second, which could be 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., depending on if I'm tied up in training sessions or meetings. No agent is obligated to check and/or respond to anything outside of their work hours, however. It's more so it's in their inbox when they log on. A Teams invite went out about 9 a.m. for a training exercise 2 days later, as I wanted to keep scheduling ahead of myself and give the guys as much notice as I could. Serial complainer went to HR and said he has a right to disconnect. HR explained that he was under no obligation to read or reply to any of these emails as his shift was 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Remember, the shift is actually 11 a.m., but all agents were happy to work to a different schedule during training and finish at 5 p.m. instead. HR requested that this agent not receive emails outside of their contracted hours due to their complaint and right to disconnect. I said, sure, no problem. Cue malicious compliance. I sent an email out at 9 p.m. 2 days later with some new information about some of the products that was due to be added the next day. This had only come via the client about an hour before. Agents were all now back to the 11 a.m. shift, and I wanted to have the information as soon as possible as I had Al booked for the next day. I had left serial complainer out as per his request and had scheduled his email to send at 11 a.m. Serial complainer then sent an email to me after receiving the email, whining that he hadn't been given adequate notice of the new information. My out of office was on as I was Al. Serial complainer then called my work mobile and left a voicemail asking me to run through the product set with him. I didn't have my work phone on, as you know, Al. I was then sent another email from him where he stated he was not informed of the products the same time as his colleagues and was being put at a disadvantage and being discriminated against, and complained that I unavailable to explain what he needed to know, which was unacceptable. I saw this email the next day after I returned from Al, and I replied at 11 a.m. stating that I am not obliged to respond to emails outside my work hours under the right to disconnect and CC'd hour. I then emailed HR separately and brought up that serial complainer was suffering from a case of the old double standards. Everyone but serial complainer receives emails outside of work hours now, and every time serial complainer sends one outside of someone else's work hours, they don't respond until their shift start. We all have. I may send this email at a time that is of convenience to me. Please note you are not obliged to respond outside of work hours. Serial complainer is not happy, but rules are rules. Next one is titled, "Oh, you need to meet your party?" So I worked a while back at a theme park. This theme park has a ride where you go up in the sky and soar over sights of the world. Anyhow, I was the lead that day, and it had been a rough day for the ride. We maybe had an hour of actually operation throughout the 8 hours of park open so far. At the moment, we had been closed for the last 6 hours. The line was closed, doors shut, and no wait time was posted. The exit for the ride is a long corridor where the two theaters meet and they exit up a ramp. Unfortunately, that ramp is wide open to anyone that feels like wandering back down. This happened quite often during operation, usually a group saying they had to leave their spot in line or they were trying to meet up family. That day, as I am walking out of the broken theater, I happened to run into a family of 4 who were just kinda hanging out in the exit. Clearly shouldn't be down there right now. So I approach them. Me. Hey guys, can I help you with anything? Guest. Yeah, we are trying to get back in line with grandma. She's holding our spot for us after we went to the bathroom. Me. That's highly unlikely, since we are closed. Guest. No. She's down here waiting for us. Me. Sorry guys, I'm gonna ask you to head back out the exit. Guest immediately changes mood. Guest. Listen here you little shit. We have been waiting in line for hours for this ride. You will bring us to the line now. Me. Oh yeah? Sure. Let's go. I bring them down through the back entrance into the grouping area, opening the door to a load area with the TVs off, sound off, lights dim. Clearly not how it's supposed to look to guests. The man walks through, practically shoulder checking me as he goes through. Me. Go ahead and find your grandma. Guest is clearly realizing his stupidity. Me. Yeah, we have been closed for 6 hours. Bye. Guest storms out, bright red in the face. Next one is titled, "It's a nice day, is it?" Don't need air condition today, do we? This story came back to me recently when I was walking outside in 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 Celsius weather. I was a public transit bus driver for a number of years. It goes without saying that everyone has a different comfort level as far as temperature goes. You've got your masochists who like it really cold, your sadists who like it really hot, and somewhere in between, there's probably a few Goldilocks out there who think they know what is just right. Sometimes, a regular rider would be vocal about the temperature not being to their liking. I welcomed that because when you're in the seat up front, you basically either have the AC on full blast or you're a wilting plant in a greenhouse. I could circumvent that somewhat by using my blowers higher, although there had to be a level of conditioning to the air and the blowers were kind of disruptive when loud. I just generally didn't know what a rider was feeling. Every once in a while, you would have a customer who wasn't just vocal, they insisted on their ideal temperature. I had a regular rider who was clearly some kind of engineering student, and he would regularly tell me when boarding that AC isn't necessary today. Honestly, it probably shouldn't have annoyed me, but he did, and I usually just ignored him because it was hot as shit up front and no one else said anything. One day he made a bigger show of it and said that it was clearly a nice day and we don't need air conditioning at all. I told him what happens to denizens of this bus when there is no AC at all. He told me if they get hot, they can just open a window. Well, based on his confidently incorrect demeanor, he clearly knew better than I did. I shut the AC down for the whole ride. I was absolutely miserable, sweating profusely, and the air was so moist. I could just tell by his general demeanor, defeated gait and meek, "Thank you," when he got off, that I would never hear anything from him about the bus temperature again. I never did. Last one is titled, "Can I have ludicrous amounts of vinegar, please?" My colleague and I used to survive our boring desk job by occasionally treating ourselves to the local chippy, often on a Thursday or Friday when we needed a pick-me-up. This was in the north of England, so I'm talking fish, chips, pies, sausage, gravy, etc. Decor from the 80s. The owners, simple, straightforward, humorless working folk. Usually I get fish and chips with a bit of salt and ketchup. I never liked vinegar on chips as I find it too acid and makes them go all soggy. My mate, however, loves vinegar on his sausage and chips, and just as we're walking to the chip shop he tells me how they never put enough vinegar on them. I say to just ask for more then. He says, "Fine, I will." We go in and order, and the girl behind the counter plates them up in those little polystyrene trays. She asks if we want salt and vinegar. My mate, "Yes, can I have ludicrous amounts of vinegar, please?" Cue malicious compliance. The girl unquestioningly picks up the vinegar bottle and starts shaking it over his chips, looking him straight in the eye the whole time. To this day I don't know if she was flexing on him in a call my bluff kind of way or just humorlessly and obediently carrying out his request. She adds 10 seconds worth of vinegar and is still staring at him for confirmation that it's enough. My mate is either too proud or too awkward to tell her to stop, so he just stands there looking on as his meal is slowly ruined. Meanwhile, the little tray is slowly filling up with vinegar. Finally, after 15 to 20 seconds of vinegarization, she stops and puts the bottle down. My mate says, "Thanks," quietly and watches as his tray of food, now close to overflowing with vinegar, is wrapped up and passed to him. At this point I'm trying not to piss my pants. We go back to the office and, inevitably, the vinegar has soaked through all the paper wrapping the meal, and my mate spends most of his lunch break trying to peel soggy strips of paper from his food. Me, "They give you enough vinegar this time?" Him, "Just about. Thanks for listening."